Hello, welcome to the inaugural video of the Sharp Knife Lawyer. If you've come here looking for answers to commonly asked legal questions, you're sitting there researching your own specific legal need, well, you've come to the wrong spot. However, I'm asking you to stick around, you may still find the content interesting. I will be launching a second YouTube channel later this year on those issues. However, if you come here looking for information about all things with sharp edges, well, you come to the right spot. So for this first video, we're going to talk about strops and stropping. Ever since I was in grade school and got my first pocket knife and started learning how to sharpen, there's always debates. Do you strop on leather, which has been done for thousands of years? My friends just said, oh no, just strop it on your jeans real quick, and that's all you need to do. Then, as I've gotten even older, searching on the internet, okay, there's now stropping on wood, specifically balsa wood or basswood, oak, alder. Then there's stropping on cardboard, there's stropping on printer paper, there's stropping on concrete, believe it or not, inside of cereal boxes on that press board. All types of materials that you could strop on. So my goal for this video is we're going to take a look at 4 different stropping substrates. And by the time we're done, I hope to unequivocally prove beyond a reasonable doubt which one of these is the best substrate. So these are the substrates we're going to be testing today. On the far left is a balsa wood strop, which I purchased online. Next to that is going to be a basswood strop, which I made using Edgepro blanks and gluing basswood on them from a local. Basswood was purchased from a local hobby store. Next will be a denim strop. The denim strop was made by gluing another piece of basswood onto a blank and then gluing extremely holey jeans onto the basswood. Lastly will be a leather strop. That was also purchased online. And again, I'll post some links below. None of these links are affiliated. I'm not getting any kind of sponsors for this. All of this is out of my own pocket. Okay, let's just do a quick timeout here. When we're talking about stropping, what we're doing, this is our knife edge. As we sharpen the knife edge, we bring the metal out this way, and this is our apex. By pushing the metal, we're pushing a real tiny piece of metal up there. Normally you can feel it, occasionally you can see it, normally it's microscopic. What we're doing with stropping is we're going to move this back and forth to cut this off as cleanly as possible so we have the sharpest edge possible. Okay, back to our video. These next few pictures, you're going to see the stropping compounds. The first one's going to be leather. The second one is going to be the balsa wood. Then the denim, and then the basswood. These are all what they look like before I put some compound on them. Now what compound I used a diamond emulsion. The brand name I used was Stroppy stuff. And I used the emulsions of a 6 micron diamond, a 1 micron diamond, a 0.5 micron diamond, and lastly a 0.25 micron diamond. What these do, these give these strops, in addition to their natural abrasiveness, extra abrasive to help rip that burr right off and further refine the edge of the knife. So these are the 2 different knives we're going to be testing. The one on the left is a Rough Rider Congress in a 1085 steel. As you see, I've got the Warncliffe or sheep's foot blade out. That is the one I used in testing. I thought the smallest blade would make the easiest and fastest testing, but as I went through this, it was a little bit of a mistake. But I think you'll see why here in a little bit. The knife on the right is Chicago Cutlery. I purchased this from Goodwill. The package called it a mini chef's knife. I don't. It was a little bit bigger than most paring knives I've used in the past. Depending on which of the websites I saw, it was either a 440, 440A, 440C, steel. The only thing that was consistent on all my research and on the packaging is it was made in China. Did I mention I was paying for everything myself, and this is kind of a budget video? So in order to keep me out of it and try to make the results as consistent as possible, I did all my sharpening and all my stropping on the Edgepro Apex. My sharpening procedure was I sharpened each knife starting with the 220 grit stone. I moved up to the 440, followed by a 600 grit stone, and finished on a 1000 grit stone. I brought each knife to a burr at each of the stone levels, and then did my burr removal before I did any of the stropping. My initial plan was just to strop off of each of the substrates and then just take a reading on the edge on up Bess test and see what the results were. However, as I was going along and started doing the first one, I realized, that's not really the true measure of what a strop is going to be able to do. You really need to see how it's going to do and how the blade's going to react to some sort of everyday cutting. So in order to do that, and this was done on the... So I hunted around the house, found out this rope out in the back of my truck. So I decided what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this rope. I ended up cutting it 50 times on a piece of spare siding that we had. I'd replaced some cypress siding late last year, and there was a piece of that scrap. That's what I used. And now here I am sharpening up the knife for the first time. If you want to watch the whole video of this, just let me know. I've got problems sleeping. I can send you all 8 hours of this if you like. It should help you out with any kind of sleeping issues you may have. And here I am starting to test all the knives. Here's what I did. For every single strop, I tested the knife, each blade in 3 separate locations. So, here I am. You'll see me slowly putting the first one together. Again, if you really want to see videos of all of this, again, let me know in the comments, and I'll see about sending all this video to you. Also, it really should help anyone with their sleeping issues. Next, you're going to see the pictures of the Chicago cutlery knife. This first one is before I did anything to it, straight out of the package. The second one is going to be after stropping on the leather. This next one is going to be after I stropped it on the denim. Finally, this is the stropping off the balsa wood. And lastly, this was the stropping off the basswood. So, after I did all of the sharpening, all of the cutting, and then all of the measuring on the Bess test score, these are the numbers I came up with. So if you've got a problem with how my numbers look for taking 3 measurements per knife, bear in mind, this is a lawyer doing these numbers. I normally hire this stuff out to a CPA. I dug back into my statistics textbooks from both high school and college to try to figure this out, and also did Google because everyone told me I needed a standard deviation. And for those of you that brain is already hurting, I totally understand. So to start with, I'm going to start with the Rough Rider. Out of the box, came out with an average Bess score of 265 with a standard deviation of 30.2. After I sharpened it and then stropped it on the leather, we increased the score to a 158. However, my standard deviation was 65.5. After cutting 50 times with the rope, and this is where I've tried to hint that doing it with the smallest blade was the worst thing I could have done. After doing 400 cuts on the rope, let me assure you my hand was killing me, even though I did it over the course of 2 days. But I digress. After cutting and chopping on that wood, the leather actually dropped down to a 407 with a standard deviation of 61.7. Well, when I sharpened it back up and then stropped it on the denim, and the score increased to a 249 with a standard deviation of 24.51. And after the cutting, it was only dropped to a 260 with a standard deviation of 19. On the basswood, I was able to increase the score all the way down to a 177 with a standard deviation of 35.24. And literally the least loss yet of cutting, it was a 216 with a standard deviation of 33. Lastly, when I did it into the balsa wood, after sharpening and stropping, it was a 190.67 with a standard deviation of 72.17. And after cutting, it dropped to a 311 with a standard deviation of 64. Now, just so y'all know, I reversed the order whenever we were doing these tests. So when I started off with the Rough Rider on a leather, worked my way to the denim, to the basswood, and to the balsa wood. Well, I did the exact opposite on the Chicago cutlery. But we're going to go back. Starting on the Chicago cutlery, I had a 213 with a standard deviation of 35. After the last of my sharpening and stropping, I gotten it down to 104 with a standard deviation of 22.53. After the cutting, it decreased to a 273 with a standard deviation of 24. On the denim, I got it to a 191.33 after sharpening and stropping with my standard deviation of 16.39. After cutting, it only dropped to a 208.67 with a standard deviation of 48.12. When I did it on the basswood, I sharpened up to a 181.67 with a standard deviation of 28.17. And then it dropped to 264 with a standard deviation of 9.94. Finally, on the basswood, when I sharpened it, I got it down to a best score of 202 with a standard deviation of 35.24. And after all the cutting, it was a 309 with a standard deviation of 36.73. Well, after all the cutting, after all running the numbers, running the best test so many times, what is the best, absolute, beyond a reasonable doubt, stropping substrate that we did here today? Well, the lawyerly answer, okay, the attorney answer says, it depends. If all you're going to do is knock a burr off, I think any of these methods work. And I think any of the other methods I mentioned earlier, except for maybe the concrete, will work well to not just knock off a burr. If you're sitting there looking to refine an edge for a certain reason, well, if you're looking for a mirrored finish, despite what my photo showed, the best, shiniest, most mirror-like polish I was able to get was with the leather. I'm gonna go down to the denim. It knocked the burr off, no ands, ifs, or buts about it. But whenever I sprayed in the stroppy stuff, it just sat right where I sprayed it. I couldn't spread it anywhere. So unless the knife hit that area, then it really didn't take the compound that well. Maybe a wax compound might do better and give different results. I think my favorite was the basswood. If you're sitting there and want to further refine the edge other than just knocking the burr off, I think the basswood gave a much smoother edge without losing all the toothiness. Cutting with it, even though the numbers didn't show it as well, it just seemed to cut easier with less strain. And bear in mind, most of the time when I was using that Warncliffe knife, my hand was killing me the whole time, especially when I got to the end of the 4th set of 50 cuts with it. But I think the basswood was the easiest of them all. The balsa wood, it did a good job. I would say it's a runner-up to the basswood as far as refining that edge. However, it left sawdust everywhere. And I mean everywhere. So, will these hold up if you're doing freehand? No. I think when I've done my freehand sharpening, I think the leather does the best so far. I'm going to keep experimenting further. You know, tell me, what is your favorite stropping substrate? Throw it in the comments, let me know. As many of y'all know, this is the very first video I have shot, edited, produced, and published. So if you have any critical comments, some critiques to help me to improve it, just let me know what they are. I'd love to read them in your comments. I've already invested into better editing software. I use iMovie for the Apple iPad for this one. Already looking at both Final Cut and Adobe. So hopefully my next videos will be much better and be able to edit much better. As for my upcoming videos, probably the first one I'm going to do is a shootout. I've got a couple knives. One's in magnet. I've got a couple versions of the same knife. I've got one that's a magnet cut. I got one in D2. I'm going to test them out through a bunch of cutting. We'll see which one holds retains their apex the best. Also, what we're looking at is I've got some knives that are the exact same, identical knives. We're going to test out whether a 600 grit progression versus a 1000 grit progression, which is going to hold us the apex or its edge the longest. I keep hearing all of this all the time. So, you know, that, oh no, it's the 1000 grit does it, it's the 600 grit that does it. Well, if you stick with me, we're going to find out. At least you'll find out how it did for me. So if you like this video, please subscribe and hit that like button. It will help out. Forward this to your friends and family that may enjoy this content. It'd be greatly appreciated. Again, thank you for your time.